of the organisation Rethink, Rebuild Society, made up of Syrians who want to see the international community help create a new start in their homeland. And here in the studio are Alex Salmond, the SNP's International Affairs spokesman, and the Conservative MP Johnny Mercer, who's on the Defence Select Committee. Yasmine Nahlawi, what does your group, what do you think the majority of Syrians who want peace, what do they want us to do?
Well, the main issue in Syria at this point is the mass atrocities that are being perpetrated against the civilian population. If you ask Syrians on the ground or if you ask Syrians outside of Syria what they want to see, it's civilian protection. And the route that we're going through and the route that we're advocating is for the UK to implement a no-bombing zone over Syria. We advocate that this is going to be the least interventionist and the least costly and yet the most effective. We don't advocate a direct confrontation with Russia. We also don't see the effectiveness of an ISIS-only bombing. We want the UK to look towards a comprehensive solution that looks towards civilian protection.
Okay, Johnny Mercer, setting up therefore no-fly zones. Any prospect?
Well, I don't think there is at the moment, John, because no-fly zones on their own aren't going to achieve what we're looking to achieve in northern Syria or wherever these are. But look, I don't think
Which is what?
Sorry?
What do we want to achieve?
Well, what we want to achieve clearly is an opportunity to create the space and time for the Syrian people to establish a peaceful and a political Syria. Now, that there's plenty of options we need to go through, but I do think the idea of sort of standing on the sidelines and wringing our wrists at it isn't going to solve anything. You know, we've seen already 250,000 people dead. We've seen 2 million people crossing into Turkey already. This is
but Yasmine is asking for protection of the people before anything else happens. Surely a no-fly zone might be one of those routes.
Yes, but how are you going to control that without any sort of ground force implementation? How are you going to control these sort of safe havens like we did in Bosnia? How are you going to do that without committing troops to the ground? I think, we all want to see the same thing, but I think this idea of completely, coming away from the conversation and not talking about extending our mission into Syria, I don't think that's the answer.
Well, do we want safe havens?
Safe havens, I mean, Yasmine's right. If you start from the premise that the first thing is protection of the Syrian people and resolution of the conflict, but you could only have safe havens if you can get agreement between the 12 countries who are combatants in Syria at the present moment. Anything else than that would require a military confrontation, which would probably add to the hostilities.
But you're a straight talker. That's a do-nothing policy, isn't it?
No, it's a policy.
Because we're not going to get those 12 countries to agree.
I'm straight down the line with the Foreign Affairs Select Committee today, which was as straight talking as you'll get. Firstly, they said the UK government is totally absent from any coherent strategy. And secondly, this idea of being number 13, unlucky 13 in the countries bombing and engaged in military action in Syria is a distraction from the real process of trying to find a peace settlement for that country to help the people of Syria that Yasmine's talking about.
Well, Yasmine, it's clear that the two politicians here are really talking about talks.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I just have to stress that Syrians themselves, we advocate a political settlement. But we've had years of failed political talks. We had Kofi Annan, we had Lakhdar al-Ibrahimi, and now we have Stefan de Mistura. And it's very obvious that these talks aren't going anywhere without real civilian protection. So without protecting civilians from air attacks, at least, which are used in an indiscriminate manner by the Assad regime, there is no way that we can achieve civilian protection, and there's no way that we can get negotiations going. So a no-bombing zone, which I would also distinguish as not safe havens, which would require troops on the ground.
Right.
It's not a no-fly zone. A no-bombing zone would allow for the conditions where a negotiation or a political settlement could emerge, and that's what we want to advocate for.
What is pretty clear, Alex Salmond, from our conversation so far is that nobody is talking about what David Cameron was talking about only a few days ago, which is extending Britain's role in bombing Syria.
No, I mean, it's gone. There is no consensus. The Foreign Affairs Select Committee have demonstrated that. They've cut right through this pretense of a policy. I mean, for 2 years, David Cameron has been itching to overturn the vote he lost 2 years ago. And all of that has been a distraction from actually building a policy which might actually help the people of Syria.
That provoked a deep intake of breath. Johnny Mercer.
Yeah, I just think we've completely missed the point of this debate. This idea that we are adding, a 13th set of bombing campaigns to Syria is a complete myth.
But they are asking.
No, let me finish, John. They are asking for a very specific capability from UK forces within that operation. And at the moment, we are saying we have a dotted line in the sand and we are not going to prosecute targets within Syria because our government does not believe, or our parliament does not believe. And it just expresses an enormous amount of naivety about prosecuting targets and dynamic targeting across the area.
Yes, but Johnny's colleagues on the Foreign Affairs Select Committee described that attitude as at best marginal and at worst a distraction from what the UK should be doing, which is using our role as well. That's your colleagues.
Do they know? What precisely do they know about targeting, which is what the Prime Minister is asking for and what the military is asking for in theatre? We need to put the case across, the case for what this is actually about, which is a tactical and a technical capability. It's getting
I didn't interrupt you. I'm merely making the point that Johnny's own colleagues, Crispin Blunt, who is an experienced politician, somebody who has a great reservoir of knowledge, his Conservative colleagues, the SNP and most of the Labour members on that committee put forward an argument directly contrary to Johnny. Now, you may think they know nothing, Johnny. Actually, I think they are talking absolute sense.
What's on the table at all?
In any case, there is no consensus. Therefore, let's look for something which might actually help the people of Syria. Let's make an initiative to bring peace to that benighted country.
Yasmine and I, surely what we can talk about with some hope and real possibility is actually investing in the very large numbers of Syrians who are just outside Syria, in Jordan, in Lebanon. You're talking about 3.5 million people. Surely that is now where the immediate profitable investment can be made.
Well, yes, of course, and we're very grateful for the UK's support already in that regard. Humanitarian support, taking in refugees. These are all things that the UK can do in the immediate term. But at the same time, these aren't sustainable solutions, and we can't focus solely on these issues. We need something that's more long-term, because if we don't go for civilian protection from its root, and we need to remember that the root of the Syrian conflict is a barbaric regime, is a dictatorship.
Let me just put that very finally, very quickly to you two. Isn't the answer actually to lock everybody into a locked room at the United Nations and say, you talk and you won't be let out until you come up with a solution?
Yes. If it was that easy, it would have been done surely by now. There are no easy answers here. There's no good answers that are going to be easy for everybody to accept. This is a really difficult situation.
Well, let's look for something that will contribute to peace, not just add to warfare.
Well, Johnny Mercer, Alex Salmon and Yasmine Nahlawi, thank you very much indeed for talking with us. Cathy.
Thanks, John. Well, the ongoing civil war in Syria